Namaste. So I do not know whether to start by a preamble that there are no perfect rule book for a perfect human relationship, just as there is no perfect rule book for perfect parenting. You have to figure out as you go along the way. And all that we can have is a few pointers. And since we are all humans, I suppose, and we are all on the path of the integral yoga, I suppose. So therefore, we need to address this issue to ourselves because it is one of those difficult areas both for our own journey and for the yoga. And the reason for this difficulty is many reasons, but one of them is that we as human beings are inherently the most complex creation on earth. So this, that's the reason why human nature as such is a very fascinating and complex thing, because it defies any simple single slot in which we can put it, a category into which we can place a human being, and therefore it becomes at once a very challenging issue. So where do we start? Normally we start from within outwards, but for this particular subject I think we can start from outside within. And the one source outwardly of most human problems. Inwardly we all know the big disease with which we suffer as human beings is egoitis, and there is no simple easy cure for it. It manifests in 101 ways. Even when we think we have conquered it, we are most in its trap. So let's start from outside within, because one of the most common causes outwardly of human frictions and human issues and human problems is this great faculty of speech. So at one place mother says very interestingly, she says, see, this power of speech is uniquely human. There are many other things uniquely human which we hardly use. For instance, self-reflection, self-progress by looking within is something uniquely human, but we don't use it. But speech is like a gift, and it makes us feel so proud that we can speak. It's almost like a child with a new toy. So we as human beings have this toy given to us which is called speech, and its purpose is to build bridges, but more often than not we break whatever bridges exist in human relationships. I remember long back seeing a movie in which there was this girl who could speak and the boy could speak. So they had, it looks like it is very challenging, this alliance, but frankly I felt this is not so challenging that if both could speak, because how the problems and how the confusions, I see it all the time, both in my practice, in our life, they come from speech. So and just like any other power, when it first manifests, it's like when a child plays with a toy, he doesn't know how to use the toy. So this faculty is most misused, and it takes time for human beings to develop how to use it rightly, how to really master it, control it, and direct it properly. And if you read the Gita and of course the mother's writings on the four austerities, we see that the Gita dedicates a whole number of slokas on the tap of speech, the austerity of speech. And we see the same thing when mother speaks about, she goes at length about austerity of speech. Among all the tapasyas, she seems to speak about speech as something very important. And of course we know that speech is a way we externalize our consciousness. So apart from it, if we speak too much, it depletes our energy, makes us vulnerable, but that's a different area altogether. But very often when we speak too much and when the speech flies on wings of vital, then it becomes, we don't know at which point which arrow will be shot and where it's going to hit. Unlike the physical arrow, which you can take out and maybe take the person to a doctor and apply some. But speech, the arrow of speech, once it hits, it's very difficult to take it out. And that's why we know there have been wars apparently because of speech. Simply because somebody spoke at a wrong moment, laughed at a wrong moment, etc., etc. So I think if as human beings we just master this faculty, one faculty, it's something tremendous. Already we're making great advance. So what happens in speech? Speech is a vehicle, we all know it. The contents of consciousness are carried in speech. There is a very beautiful letter of Sri Aurobindo on psychic self-control of speech. So speech has these two elements, the sound and the words. And while words are things on which we focus, we try to very carefully master the meaning, etc. But sound is something we should be very careful about. The same thing said with a certain stress and emphasis on the sound changes its meaning altogether, completely, its effect altogether. So this particular instrument is so important in our human dealings. The mastery of speech involves a whole lot of things. One of them is that speak as little as possible and listen more than you speak. Now I know my wife is sitting there, she will say, yes, that's an advice for you. But it's so true. If you really look inside, we understand that if we learn to listen, just to listen, half the problems are gone, just to listen. People are not wanting to prove always a point, but they just want to speak out their feelings. Allow them to speak out, and it releases a lot of things inside. And if you can listen with not just with the outer ear, but listen with the heart, with a heart of kindness and compassion, it solves many problems. And the source of this compassion and kindness, as I have understood and learned in life, is that we all human beings are going through our own issues, our own difficulties, our own challenges. There is a very nice saying in Hindi, "Hamam mein sab nange." We are all taking a shower and we are all without our clothes inside the shower. So when we are all taking a shower, so we need to understand that human nature is by, this I learned this phrase, I learned from a very different way. It was in Russia that suddenly I hope there are no Russians here, but they are beautiful people. I have very good friends, and when I went for a bath, I realized it's a common bathroom. So I thought only for men. They said, no, anybody can come, men or women. I had to request, okay, I am not that developed to live in that consciousness of liberty where I am beyond gender. So they were very kind and kept for me a separate timing altogether, as a slot. But coming back to this, when we struggle with the difficulties, Mother says at one place that people who are very intolerant of others, who are quick to criticize others, who are quick to blame others, they basically have not struggled within themselves with their own problems. That's why we see that when people are very young, adolescent, and immediately after adolescent, they revolt and they believe that they are the best and they are the ideal people in the world and everybody else is far below. And this is something I think most of us go through, all of us perhaps go through. But as you grow through life, you realize something, and you realize that it's so challenging, human life, from every point of view it's challenging and difficult to master one difficulty, and that brings a state of humility, and as the Mother puts it, it brings sunny tolerance. Sunny tolerance and generosity of heart is very different from simply using the label of liberal and tolerant. Some of the most intolerant people are those who, take a banner of tolerance and liberality, because it comes from the heart. It is not an ideology which makes you tolerant. when you go through life and you discover that each one has their own challenges. So this brings a certain kind of acceptance. And when there is a certain kind of acceptance, we can look at us humans in two different ways. One is that we are holding hands and wrestling with each other. And the second is we are holding hands, we are all in a mud pool and we are trying to help each other come up. I remember one of the dreams I had long back, dream visions, and this turned out to be prophetic subsequently. And I saw that there was a very interesting game which was arranged in our ashram playground, and we all had to take a ball and put it into the goal. But the game was very easy. There was only one side, goal, and all of us went together. How beautiful. You just throw the ball and people have to take it and put the goal. You can put as many goals as you want. So I said, this is fantastic. But then as the game proceeded, I discovered something very interesting. Just 5, 6 of us were trying to take it to the goal, and all others, when the ball came in their hand, they were pushing it backward. And it was so difficult to explain that, look, there is the goal and we all are on one side. We are not on two sides. It's so interesting. And this dream taught me many things. Of course, it was a prophetic vision, as I said. That the day we understand that we all have a common origin, we all have a common issues, and we all are moving toward the same goal. One of the things that we learn when we travel too much, travel outside, see the surface differences when we look at people as colors and language. This is all surface. But anyone who has traveled all over the world, I'm sure most of us have, you discover that it's the same problem, same issues, same challenges, same heart, same problems that human beings face, which is about human nature. It's just the same universally. And it brings a kind of sobering attitude, a kind of wideness. So once we understand this basic thing, then we see that most of our interactions with each other are on the surfaces of life. And this is something repeatedly that Mother teaches us, that we live on the surface, we are caught on the surface, and we get pulled and dragged into the surfaces. And on the surface there is nothing but the pleasing play of the ego. And perhaps that is why the great saying of the great poet, that too much closeness breeds contempt. Why? Because when you live very close together, you begin to observe small little issues which, if you just step back, are really not important at all. I have seen people fight over who will control the remote, as if controlling the remote is controlling life. And I suppose one of the things in the ashram which Mother has done so beautifully is that, well, people can be together, they can be friends and all, but have your own space where you go back and sleep. And I think this is so important. They are very practical things. Have your own space where you can retire and be with yourself and whatever way you want to spend your time. So I have seen that most of the interactions are on the surfaces of life, meaning thereby we are just reacting to every little impulse, every little word, every little gesture, and on the surfaces there are a lot of imperfection. Shouldn't be said that the change of surface nature is the last. And unfortunately, we are looking all the time for these specimens of Superman outside. So, of course we fail because it's not there. If you want to really look at where the Superman or the new race is being formed, it is deep inside. And where is it being formed? In the will, the idea, the faith. Because we can't see that. Deep inside, whatever is a person's faith and persistence of will, that he is going to become. And the divine sees that. And that's why many times we don't understand that this person and Mother is so close to this person. Why? Because we are looking at the surface, but she is seeing the depths. I remember a small little story and how Mother would deal with these different people, most nuttiest cases in the universe, I think, whichever, because where else they will go? After all, they will go to the divine healer. And the story is, of course, we all know, but I won't mention the name. Someone who one day got very annoyed, and Mother gave her some flowers, and she threw those flowers right there. that you don't love me, I don't care, and I'm going. So she went to her room, and right behind Vasudhadi comes and says, do you want to know what mother? First she gave her a card which mother had instantly sent. So she said, mother has sent a card for you. Okay, keep it there. Do you want to know what mother said after you left the place? No, I don't care. No, still, if you want I can tell you, otherwise I'll go. Okay, tell me what did mother say about me. Now normally you see, what would we expect? See, she doesn't value what I am giving her. She's the divine mother. What all she must have poured into her. She doesn't value, this is humanity. But what did mother say? She said, this girl doesn't know how much she loves me. This was for her a life-changing experience. To be able to see the love which is in the depths. If we see the surfaces of life, we'll see all kinds of, because surface is always the poison is coming out. But if we look into the depths, we will see that vibration of love, that little flame of love. Mother could see even in the Titans, that famous Nilkant Shastri, the Tantric who used to come, and he one day said, Mother, I have done the puja and I want to encircle the Titans. They won't trouble anybody anymore. And the mother says, he doesn't understand. What he doesn't understand? She says, even in them there is this element of divine love. Another thing very beautiful that we learn, many beautiful things, just reading their lives we learn. So we know that story of Bhavan when he went with a list of people, whom he said, Mother, why are you keeping these people here? They are basically just a burden. He didn't say in so many words. And as you know, he was all full of service, and for him, mother's work meant everything. And then she says, give me that list, and she sees the list, 25 people, and one by one she says, but this person can do this better, this person can do this. Last she comes on to a person, he says, but have you noticed that he fixes these stamps so beautifully on the envelope? And he gives up, he says, okay. So you see, this is the difference between human vision and the divine vision. We see that little dot, tumhari sari par daag hai, that's the dot on your sari. And the divine says, oh, you look so beautiful. That is the difference between the two visions. And if we encourage this beauty, there is something very interesting which is in psychology, we speak about it. That children who are constantly, when parents keep passing all kinds of remarks, they end up justifying. It's like a negative role playing. Whereas when we say beautiful things about people, of course it doesn't mean we should flatter and say all kinds of beautiful things, but always everyone has something which is beautiful. It's just a question of, if I'm not able to find it, it means I'm deficient in that aspect. Everyone has something beautiful. And then when we begin to look at that aspect, that there is something beautiful in human beings, in this particular person. So mother speaks about it in one of her passages. She says, my child, I always look upward. I look towards beauty, towards truth, toward this splendor that is going to come. And if I were to look at the ugly side, well, nobody will be able to stand a chance. Just on the way we saw this wonderful lotus pool. Now you see, this is the other part of too much of closeness. If we went close, maybe the stench will affect us, maybe we will look at the mud which is below. So always it's very good to keep a little space in the relationship. I have seen that relationships get too close when two people are all the time together. This can create all kinds of challenges. But to give a little space, as Gibran put it so beautifully, let there be space in your togetherness. And I think this is a need today's times even more, because as such in today's time, because evolution has become fast forward. So it's like when people give a little space, allow people to explore their own life in their own way, unique way. Because each of us has our individual journeys, which is unique and different from anyone else. But we have an innocent need mother uses the word innocent. That everybody should be like us, think like us, act like us. We want monotone. And the divine doesn't want monotone. That's why when he wants us to evolve, he would put sometimes two very dissimilar people together. So that's a challenge, that's a grace, because that's how the world is. No two people should be alike, because the original plan is unity in diversity and not unity in uniformity. But invariably, the most liberal person, and it's so surprising, the most liberal persons want that everybody should be liberal. The most tolerant person is extremely intolerant about any other view except tolerance, which is a paradox. Meaning thereby, because these ideals cannot be realized by the mind. Tolerance is not something which, in fact, tolerance is not a good word. It's very demeaning. If somebody tells me, I'm tolerating you, I would say, please, you don't have the need to tolerate. Tolerance is like I am superior and I am already condescending someone and looking from the world, I am tolerating you. The right word is I understand you. I understand. You have your differences. Why not? Let's celebrate those differences. So this is one of the ways to navigate through life instead of being critical. Now we have people who will just pick up those little things. There are people who are hypercritical. And they're sadly even critical about themselves. Very diffident. They always have a negative or rather self-depreciation. They always are critical about others. And there is a very nice story about it. Someone wrote to Sri Aurobindo that, "Sir, I have not done any harm to this man. And I have seen he has been talking all ill about me to everyone." Sri Aurobindo said, "But that's quite common." And then he said, "Haven't you heard Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar? Famous remark that he said, he is critical about me, but I have not done any good to him." When you do good to someone and someone is critical, I have tried to understand, I have seen this kind of thing. Why are people so critical even when you do apparently some good? So it's one way you want to escape from the need to be grateful. Because you have found a fault. So this fault finding, all this exercise. And another very interesting thing which I remember, it had struck me. I didn't remember the moment it had struck me. I had read from Sri Aurobindo and I closed my door and I was moving out of the room and I was wondering, it hit me very hard. And Sri Aurobindo says, most of the fights are for small things. I wondered, yes, we don't fight over. I've seen people fight over ideologies. I've seen people split. Actually, very good marriage, wonderfully going, and the person both wrote to me that like she's my ideal partner and he's my heaven-made partner. And when the Ukraine-Russia war started, you find it difficult to believe they parted their ways because one supported Ukraine and the other supported Russia. It's so strange. But this is a real story. And it was beyond me that, why would this spill over in this way? But then, yes, very often, more often, most often, fights are over small little things. Over how much salt is there in the food. Why are you dressed up like this and not like that? Sometimes, staying a little away is very helpful because sometimes over smell. So it's fine. Each carry their own smell and be in that atmosphere. But these are about very small things. Why you didn't say this to me or why you said this to me. So all these fights are very often about small things because the smaller and narrower the consciousness, the more the ego becomes fragile, the need to defend, and you'll see that groups which all the time are saying that we are threatened, basically the consciousness becomes so small, narrow, rigid. Because now you are in a hole, and when you are in a hole, you feel very vulnerable because you don't have anywhere else to go. And these groups can be very violent, very aggressive. And mother says that violence is a sign of weakness and lack of control over the vital. But I must clarify, because very often the way spiritually we understand violence is very different from the way it's understood ordinarily. So violence and non-violence are inner states. Inwardly, when we are in a state of non-violence, means I don't want any harm to anyone. I don't want any injury, even to my enemy, so-called enemy. I should not have any bad will. I shouldn't even once, not only utter, but even in my heart. Because if I have bad will, it's going to hurt me more than anyone else. Because a snake can bite somebody once in a while, but a snake is the most pitiful creature. Because he's carrying that poison inside, he's full of fear. See, nature gives us so many hints. The deadliest creature on earth is a snake, a venomous snake. And the most frightened creature upon earth is a snake. And he wants to be in a hole and wants to stay in a corner because it's so much afraid. So the smaller the consciousness, the more violent we are inside. And this violence shows up in many ways. And we know that, there are some funny ways of violence which I must passingly mention. Passive aggression, many people may have heard about it. Passive aggression is where I say, yes, I'll do it. I never do it. It's my way of torturing you. So, anyways, that's not so important. But the important thing is that inwardly, if I am prone to anger, anger is one thing which destroys. The Gita puts it so beautifully. If one wants to understand the psychological aspects of human nature, the Gita is indeed one-stop shop. And so beautifully it says that Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha. So what happens when anger overtakes us? We are deluded. We are clouded. We believe we are right. Of course, everybody all the time believes they are right. But still, we are completely at that moment overtaken. We become anger. And then this anger can damage our own self first, because the heart that harbors anger, jealousies, the smallness, this is so dangerous for oneself more than anyone else. Like for instance, jealousy and possessiveness. Mother says it's like a scar on their own soul. It's so difficult to, and then yes, it harms others. So simple things like managing anger, how to manage anger, go a long way in improving relationships. And the simple way is playing a lot of games, diverting this anger into fruitful activities. I think one reason why the mother emphasized so much on physical education and physical activities in the ashram is particularly anger and the sexual impulse are very beautiful ways, games, and for the sexual impulse, writing. It is another thing which I have seen, the relation of sexual impulse with relationships, turbulences, and it may sound very strange, but something which mother has said, that each sexual act, we take a dip into the inconscient. And it's so strange that most relationships, the moment I'm talking now of a man and a woman, or maybe man and a man, I don't know. I mean, everything is possible, but that's not important. But the moment sexuality intervenes, almost inevitably it intervenes because we are made up of a lot of animality still there in us. The moment it intervenes, the consciousness dips and is followed by all kinds of reactions and responses. But if that part is somehow kept out, my own little study of number of people who have, fortunately I am on this side of the table when people come. But that's, of course, all of us are on all sides of the table. But the only thing is, I have seen that relationships which really go a long way are those relationships where this element just goes away. So that's why you will see that in a man-woman relationship, in a typical husband-wife relationship, 7 years each and all those honeymoon period is over, all these terms come in. Because when we base the relationship on the vital, then vital by its nature wants a change. That's the unfortunate part, whether we like it or we don't like it. Vital wants a change. And if the relationship is based on the vital, on surface looks, attractions, then after a while the surface attraction gets off. If it is based on something little higher, which is emotional gratification, then emotional gratification after day in and day night from the same person, that tends to wear off. Even a life based on companionship, after a while you know each other's thoughts. So there is no novelty. Most people who live together, they know, okay, I know what you're going to say. So after some time, it stops. So what is the basis of relationship? So now, as I said, we are going from outside and within. This is a very beautiful letter of Shri. He says, because, well, Dilip Kumar Roy and there are many others, very exuberant, vital in abundance, and they would write, why are people so much looking at cross with each other in the ashram, his smile band, his friendship band in the ashram, and then Shri says, no. There is a beautiful letter. He says, friendship, affection, love. In fact, the sequence is love, friendship, affection, tender care, fidelity. Uses the word. He says these are indispensable notes in the harmony that we want to bring. But we have seen that unless they are based on this secure psychic basis, they do not last. It brings a lot of pain. So this is something like a lesson that we believe in, like fast food. Relationship are like, I have paid the price, now I have purchased Miss Perfect and Mr. Perfect. It's one of the biggest illusions. Perfection is to be built, and I think most people forget that relationships, like everything else, must evolve. They may start with the vital. It may be a surface attraction, doesn't matter. It may be because you like somebody's speech or thoughts and it was beautiful. But if we stay there and get stuck there, it won't work out. So they alone succeed who take this life as an evolutionary challenge and evolve through the process. And it's beautiful if two people can evolve together, or if a group can evolve together. That's so beautiful. But for that to happen, it must be centered around something which is permanent. Any relationship which is centered around something temporary is going to sooner or later wear off. But if it's based on something permanent, what is that permanent secret of relationship Mother gives? And she says, there is the fire inside. Any relationship which is based on the common aspiration. Common aspiration is not necessarily same path. One may be on the same path, but the aspiration will be very different. Aspiration is something unique to each one. One may have an aspiration to serve the divine. Another person may have an aspiration, I want to know the divine. Now these, on the same path, but they tend to, and even there are varieties of combinations and connections. So if there is a common aspiration, then whatever may happen outwardly, the relationship will go through all this, last and grow. It's known, this phenomenon is known in psychiatry, in psychology, that every relationship goes through a turbulent period when people tend to break up, or they are on the verge of breaking up. Now, when we are very impatient with each other and in general with life, when we are looking for a ready-made something, then people do break up. And when they break up, they realize that, well, if you have worked through a relationship for a long time, it's much better, saner, to work with it rather than try out something new. This is, Shubhendra speaks about it in one of his conversations. Because you've already worked, you know now each other's plus and minus. So, if you go through this turbulent phase, which I have a term for it, it goes through the vital morass in which relationships get caught. But if one can go through it, go past it, like many of our, I feel, parents who were more patient with each other, maybe because of society, maybe because of whatever reasons, but when they went across it, it entered into a very stable phase. But there is a phase when it's very turbulent, and if one, that's the breaking point. And This turbulence can only be overcome if we look beyond that immediate gains. So one of the things which helps in anything in life, any sphere in life, I feel, and in relationship also is very important, is something which I have seen in the generation that has gone before us. One thing they taught us, they had many defects, problems, issues, all right. But one thing they knew was tyaga and tapasya. They knew sacrifice. The spirit of sacrifice. Why? Because they took life like that. They took life like, at least in the Indian setting it was dharma. That's how it is. God's will. Learning to accept it as God's will. And then learning to sacrifice. So relationship is built through mutual sacrifice. What if the other person doesn't sacrifice? Well, still, the one who is sacrificing grows. Often I hear a complaint, but the other person doesn't understand. Doesn't value it, doesn't matter. In Synthesis of Yoga, Shukla gives us a very, very fascinating thing. And though he speaks about outer gifts, it applies that much to inner things. He says, whoever the recipient and the giver, whatever the gift, even if it is refused by the immediate recipient, still, if you have given it in the spirit that you are giving to the divine, it is noted and accounted. So it goes into the hundi, as they say, of short karma. So if you have sacrificed for someone, all your life you may have sacrificed. And there's some, Shobhita gives this beautiful example of, say not, that love like of Savitri, of Ruru and Rama and Sita does not exist. So there very interestingly, when he speaks of Ruru, he doesn't speak of Priyambada. When he speaks of Savitri, he doesn't speak about Satyavan. But other examples he gives of both. So it could be a one-sided sacrifice. It doesn't matter. Because sacrifice, when it is done with an expectation, loses its meaning. It's a bargain. We may say, I have no expectation. But sooner or later the expectation strikes. It's just that we have put into a long-term deposit, but one day we want the deposit. We don't want the thing to crash like the Bank of America. We want, one day you have to give me back my deposit. And if it doesn't come, then we are very unhappy. But if the sacrifice is done with this idea that it is my purificatory ritual and I am doing it to the divine in that person, it's a challenge, but something very beautiful. When you see completely contrary appearance, even a person may appear very hard outwardly, but still there is the divine flame. So if we look at it, life gives us these opportunities to grow and to grow through this law of sacrifice. And another thing very beautiful which we see in Savitri also, and the mother reminds us that people are like, two things she says, that the world is a mirror, so very often we see in others what is concealed inside us. Again, one of those Mahavakyas, when I had read it, it hit me very hard. I started noticing, this I have seen, is it in me? Where is it in me? And after some time I discovered that yes, it's there in a seed state, it is there hidden carefully inside. Whatever I am seeing in the other person, it's there inside. It's almost a universal truth. And the second thing she says, our relationships, they are like a mirror which show us our other selves. You see, why do we connect with some people and not with others? One is the affinity, but the other is that each one represents something of some aspect of our complexity. The problem is that when we want that, this person is completely mine and this is an illusion which we must get rid of. Nobody is anybody's. That is the divine. The moment we make an error there, that's why the mother says, as far as deep within it is concerned, it's only the divine. This used to be another challenge that at least I used to face, that I want to love the divine as a beloved. And then I wondered, what does it mean to turn to the divine as a beloved? And then beloved is somebody whom you can actually share anything and everything without being sure that you will not be judged, you will not be condemned, because that's what the beloved is about. He loves you best. There is a very beautiful conversation of the mother which all of us maybe later on can read. It's in volume 9, and the mother gives a whole commentary on our best friend, and starts with one of her passages where she says, our best friend is he who loves us in the best part of ourselves, but does not expect us to be otherwise. How beautiful it is. It's, at least for me, it's been like a beacon light. That take the best part in everyone. Connect with that. Leave the other side completely. You'll be inwardly free. Now this idea that no, even when you feel that somebody so-called is yours or etc., whatever that means, still this idea that the person should be like me is another fallacy. Nobody can be like another person, and so all the advice given by all the people, including psychiatrists, have no meaning unless we have this capacity of a very vast universal consciousness and reach out for the other person's state of consciousness, what the other person needs. And that's why you see when somebody went to Swami Vivekananda, 20s, and very impressed by him, and he goes and says, I want to renounce the world. I want to renounce, not world, he said, I want to renounce. And Swami Vivekananda, who is a renunciator, at a young age he is taken to renunciation. He says, what do you have that you can renounce? And he had never, it hit me. He said, you go, work in the world, earn 1 lakh rupees, then come back and say that, I am going to renounce. Now you see, Swami Vivekananda, though he is a sannyasi, he did not advocate that to this man. In fact, very often in the order of monks, he would say, you people are just wasting your time. He would say that, and people found it very difficult to take his comments. But they had no choice. Because it's not, a sannyasi expects everybody to do that. Even it doesn't leave us, even when one is following a path, one wants the other person to follow the path. So I often hear these standard advices, anybody who comes from anywhere in the world and says, I have a problem. No, you start, seeking the divine, or you call the name of this particular guru, take this mantra. It doesn't work. To each one, things work differently because each one is in a different state of evolution. And that's why the less advice we give, the better we are and the safer is the other person. Of course, I know people may ask, what are you doing? Most of my task is listening because people want someone to listen. And I suppose that's why in ancient times you had the system of confession, which of course the mothers had turned into something very dark. But people want to be heard. They're not wanting advice. It's something you learn painfully that they don't want your advice. Very often they want ratification of their views and opinions. So parents often come and talk about their children. The moment I want to open my mouth and tell them, sir, it's not the children, it's about you. You need to change. I hold myself because I know that this is not going to help. They don't want an advice. People already have formed their opinion. But once in a while you will see somebody genuine in crisis, seeking help and seeking some kind of advice. But even there, you must be very careful because most of the time we give advice based on our limited experience. This idea that I have experienced life like this, therefore it is true. And I can give just one example out of many. Very often we hear, I had also heard from childhood, that what a person does is more important than what a person speaks. And it sounds very logical, reasonable, till I met salespeople who did very nice things, who spoke very nicely, smiled very beautifully, and cheated you royally. Not all salespeople are like that. And then, when I read Shurvilo, it justified one of my natural instincts that it's not actions, something else. And there are two Mahavakyas of Shurvilo. One is he says, action and event have no importance in themselves, but for the idea they represent and the force that is there to serve the idea. So unless we know what was the idea inside, we cannot judge an action. And then when he speaks about East and West in one of his Bangla writings, he says the difference between East and West. And he says that synthesis must be there, but it must be on an Eastern foundation. And he says in the East, we look at the motives. I'll tell you a very recent event. So recently in Uttar Pradesh, a gangster was shot dead. And everybody, oh, this is not the way to do it. This action is terrible. But there are many who rejoiced. Now why they rejoiced? Because they knew the motive inside, the deep behind, and therefore this thing which is instinct within the Indian mind. So he says in India, we judge by the motive inside. So when Shiva destroys, Kali destroys, she is still the loving mother. This is not a, okay, anybody can destroy and say, I have got good motive. That's not what it means. But it is the motive which actually none of us can see, but only the divine sees. And he knows himself in the heart of the seeker. So we see most of the time the outer actions, judge, condemn, criticize, and based on that draw our conclusions. And what is worse, one last little thing before we open for questions, Shubham has given us something very beautiful. It's about evolution. But we fix people in frozen frames. This is something which I find so strange. 20 years back, sometimes people, oh, he is like this. So I ask them, okay, what happened? No, this, I saw this person do this. So when was it? 10 years back. I said, so you believe he is a stone? Even stones can evolve from mud to becoming a god worth worshipping. See, many of these Indian stories, Ratnakar has hidden inside him a Valmiki. Angulimal has Anand hidden inside. Just the question of vision. Jagai and Madai of infamous fame become the famous devotees and disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Saint Augustine, imagine, who becomes one of the great saints whose prayers are so touching, at least they are not just heartwarming, they are psychic expressions. And look at his life before he, till 36 years, what kind of life he was leading. So when we really look at people, we freeze them in frames. We fix them. And thereby we kill them. Why? Because the person has no chance, not improving. But if we keep in mind that everybody can evolve, is evolving, and after all, it's not so important what benefit I can derive from a person. This selfishness, meanness, I have not even touched upon it because they are really too low and ugly. Meanness, selfishness are two, Shubham says, two unpardonable sins, yet they are universal. He says selfishness and meanness are the only sins I abhor, and yet they are so universal that they too must be pardoned. And another place he says courage and love are the only virtues. So this, of course, we need not speak even about that, but at least we must understand that everybody is evolving and can grow, and if in our relationship we can help each other evolve. That's why this concept has come even in prisons. I think in Pondicherry prison, many other places. Now prisons are beginning to become reformatories. So if hardcore criminals can evolve, and people who don't believe it, this speech of Sri Aurobindo, Uttar Pada speech, is so sobering. It has so many beautiful things, but one of them is and Tales of Prison Life, when he looked at the people who were murderers, criminals, and people whom he says in our superior pride we used to call them choti log, that they are small people. And in them, he sees Vasudeva. And not only sees them, he says, these are the people whom I am going to lift. And why? What is so special about them? One last word, something which we have to learn from Sri Aurobindo all the time is humility. If there is one example of humility, Mother has spoken about it, it is Sri Aurobindo. And someone, that picture of Sri Aurobindo where Mrinalini is sitting on the chair and Sri Aurobindo is standing by the side. Recently someone sent a WhatsApp doctored image, and the image was Sri Aurobindo sitting below and the mother is standing by the side, little leaning towards him. I said, this person doesn't understand Sri Aurobindo. Never would he do that. You see, with Mrinalini Devi, she is sitting on the chair, and mother would be fine. She would be happy, she's always this, but she is sitting and Sri Aurobindo is standing. That image is so amazing. Here is this lady probably doesn't understand much about the world. Her husband is too way beyond her. And here is Sri Aurobindo from an infinite intelligence pouring all his love upon her. So much so that when she leaves the body, Sri Aurobindo says, this is one sorrow. God has seen to it to lay upon my heart the one sorrow that still could touch me. So this kind of love which breaks all barriers, flows from a great height to something so much below in every way. This is humility. And with all his brilliance, all encompassing, so much to learn from Shiva. Never he would get irritated. So many people would write letters, same thing again and again, blaming him, complaining. At one place in one of his letters, he says 2/3 of the ashram indulges in this. All the time blaming and complaining, unhappy over something or the other. He said, this is the main obstacle. He said, all other obstacles are very small. This is the main obstacle. If this could go, things would go very fast. In fact, using the word not things would go very fast, transformation would come very fast. But looking at the small things, crying over it, complaining, blaming, calling all kinds of adverse forces into play. So we could have that basic humility and understand that we are all here holding hands together. Just because I am holding hand doesn't mean कि permanent है. Buddha has come and taught us. We have to go back 4,000 years back. The permanent is only the divine. Permanent love is only with the divine mother. But at the same time, we are holding each other's hands. Let's embrace and carry each other together. Then pull each other down. That's why we close with the joke. I don't know whether it applies now or not. But yes, it applies that when there were tins of crabs coming from different countries that were sent for sale somewhere else, the tin of Indian crabs there was no cover. So they asked, why is it so? And all the crabs were intact. They keep pulling each other's legs so they will never escape. It is sadly true. We don't pull each other's legs and don't let anyone really grow and prosper. So let us, instead of pulling each other's legs, pull each other's hands and understand that human life as it is today is imperfect. Yet it is on the way to becoming perfect. And it cannot become perfect if we keep quarreling with each other. For the mother, this was strange. She says, why do human beings quarrel? And she says, I am surprised. I was so touched reading that. She is surprised that human beings quarrel. Why do they quarrel? What a waste of energy. What a waste of everything. Even if you have differences, you can't solve them. You have to do what you have to do. But why quarrel? Why hate? Why throw away all these dark emotions? Be bitter. And all this comes, we go back to that one remedy, or rather one problem, which is called egoitis, with which human beings uniquely suffer. The more intellectually developed, the more one suffers. I am a sadhak, I am doing sadhana, don't disturb me. Remedy, methods, humility, tincture, 10 drops 3 times a day, as often as one can. Devotion toward the divine, because it automatically brings humility. The permanent remedy, discover the psychic. Probably you'll discover much more often, and union with the divine is the permanent remedy. As the mother says, that we can discover in others only that perfection which we have discovered within ourselves. And if we discover it in ourselves, probably we will see much more often in others. If I am unable to see something beautiful in the other person, it means I have not discovered that beautiful part within myself. So I think I'll stop here. The 1 hour is over, but I don't know if any questions are there. Most welcome. Yes, please.
Towards the end, when you said about the crabs, Indian crabs. And I think you made it through interesting by graphing the human nature and the universal. If it is not that, and it is only our Indian culture.
Thank you for saying that. Actually, I felt sad when I spoke about the Indian crab. But it's true. But at the same time, if I think this tendency is a little more in India. Very impersonal if I see. And I wondered why. See, I'll give you one example. In different countries, people face crisis and all this. At least for some issues, people will be together. Say for an issue which is concerning the entire nation, they will be together. Let's take an example. I'm not a great fan of America, but if there is, let's say, an attack. I remember once going to several times I have traveled, as you know. So one of the places where my suitcase was opened, and the card, TSA card was inside. And that's okay, but the tea I was carrying from Hong Kong, that was all opened and spilled over. So it was not a very good sight to open the suitcase first of all, see. So I went and told my host that, see, this what is happening. He said, yes, they have to do it. It's in national interest. And it struck me that had it opened here, many of us would have blamed the then government, whoever was the government, but see, this is how they are. Now this was done in a national interest, and I appreciate that. Yes, that's true. Every nation has the right to safeguard itself. So while I agree it is universal human nature, but this problem, and the reason for it is very deep. The problem for this is that India is so diverse that people easily tend to identify with a kind of group than another. So that's where the pulling, leg pulling, etc. comes in. As to the governments, well, the days of democracy are over, and I think it's being overused, so that's a different story altogether. But it is universal. Sadly, perhaps a little more in India. If there is an attack today, unfortunately, from any of the countries, Pakistan or China, we have seen it during Doklam Fest and all. Invariably, the opposition, whoever it is, will blame the government. That's why Atal Bihari Vajpayee stand, though in opposition, when Indira Gandhi had taken over Bangladesh, something so great to be remembered for all time, that he went to her and said, we are fully with you on this. And he said, you are like Durga at this point of time. But very few have that wideness and generosity of heart.
The second part of the question you were addressing, that suppose India has this and it has a deep cultural effect or whatever, and if people from other countries come here, they will be surely affected by it, and they may become socially behave in the same way. And if you see, I don't know how it works, but in our world now, whatever that is happening, other people are, some people are pulling down on others. Whether it is due to this problem in India or
the disease has been contagious.
Yeah.
I tell you, I'll give you, just sharing this. I'm sorry I'm being a bit blunt and forthright. Somebody had asked me, when I traveled to Spain. So someone asked me, about our oil problem, and the road will be built and trees will be cut. So I asked very bluntly, as you see in your country, when you make a road, what do? Do you cut the trees or you don't cut the trees? So we cut the trees, but we plant. I said, exactly. You cut a tree and plant 10. So why this happens? Because there is the spirit of collective discipline. Should be the point in that. The same thing people will do here, or they will not do outside. I think Singapore, you must be knowing, they will not dirty. This sense of collective discipline is something which India has lacked. And that is something which has led to its downfall. Despite so many courageous people, even today, even when you speak about, Shubhra spoke of that in Bangla writings. He said, unfortunately, like for instance, the Marathas, Shivaji, saw India as mother, but she was mother of the Marathas. Ranjit Singh, Raja Ranjit Singh, brave warrior, saw her as mother of Punjab. And even now you will see people glorifying one particular group of people as if others had no role or little role. But that's why I was thinking the other day that we should start a movement in India. Maybe it would at some point come here. Me to India. And I was thinking in Hindi we can start Main Bharat. The man standing on the sentinel guarding the pass in remote Arunachal or this place is as much India as the man sitting in the parliament and governing. So this idea, that's why nationalism is so important. Shouldn't say that there is a nationalism is rajasic, it is egoistic. He says, but it is important. Patriotism is sattvic. But you need both, because if you don't have the spirit of nationalism, this is something which has been lacking, because everybody is busy with their own self-interest. So in oral context, first of all, we should understand, it's a matter of pride, what it means to be an Orwellian. It's not just about the charter. When I want to identify truly with the vision of the mother, with her creation, there would be different interpretation, but who is at the center? Can I have my own way and my own vision of, imagine everybody has, somebody may have an idea about India that I want to sell it. That's how people thought during the time of Rajas, that's how they sold. So can that be accommodated? Does it make any sense for a group? So a group must have a center and a core. And for some reason I feel that that core has very gradually shifted. And why it is shifted? Because we started making the Divine Mother, sorry to say, indispensable. We made dispensable. It doesn't matter. Why? Because any which way. This is a very fatal mistake. It came in, then it has taken roots. Now, when you say that, there is no core and center. So each of us has our own thinking of yoga, each of us has their own brand of yoga. So many activities which go on in the name of yoga. We don't even need to read Mother and Shiva. Why? Because freedom. Now that's not what it means. There is no central connecting point. And I believe just like India, Shabda said, will get united when we have the vision of Mother India. But even there he said, don't take Mother India in isolation with the universal mother. So he spoke of the threefold vision of India. Mother India, universal mother, because otherwise it will become aggressive, egoistic thing, and like Star Wars, that one country is saving the whole world, and the transcendental Divine Mother. So that is the need of the moment, that we belong to the Mother, and more than anything else, we are not here to satisfy our own idea of what things should be. I'll just touch one small thing, then I'll stop here. In a meeting once long back, I think 25 years back, that was India's 50th anniversary, and I was part of the meeting. All the big people were there, and they were thinking about what we should do for India. And they were all Sri Aurobindo, connected with Sri Aurobindo. So one great person, I won't name, he said, this is how we will build the India of our dreams. I said, excuse me, the India of Sri Aurobindo's dreams. And the meeting closed with that. The India of Sri Aurobindo's dreams. We are not here to fulfill our own idea and dreams. It will create chaos. But maybe a group has to go through chaos. That's a different story altogether. I mean, maybe humanity has to go through chaos. Maybe the world has to go through. That's a different story. But very frankly, when we lose sight of the center, and then these things happen. That happens also because many kinds of vested interests come in, selfishness come in. I mean, it opens the doors to all kinds of pitfalls. Should be the caution that when people come in, they join, they pay a lip service. It's very easy for me to say I am an ashramite. What does it mean to be an ashramite? Is it my name on the prosperity? Or is it something much deeper? That's the question which each one has to ask. Also, if we take the larger view, since we are at this particular issue, people often say, well, everybody has the freedom. I said, yes. So then people have the freedom to act according to the law and do all kinds of things. Blows come, all that is part of the large picture. If we really say that there is this greater wisdom, then the greater wisdom can do anything. So maybe the greater wisdom is pushing people, operating through X, Y, and Z. But the point is that the route we want to take, that's where each one has to be. Still we are in the rational curve which has become dated. Human beings have to evolve from the rational to the intuitive age. And I don't think it can come without an opening to the psychic door or going beyond the rational analytical mind. As long as we are there by debate and discussion, we have debated since Socrates' times and we know where the world is. And if we still believe in the superiority of the rational, analytical, debating mental processes, then we are far behind. We are living in, I would say, ancient times. Because I see more and more people who are awakening to intuition. So what does the intuition say? You have to look deep within. And if I am justifying a way of life, that means I am not intuitively correct. Okay. Something. Okay. So I think, thank you so much.